So now that we have them in the order we want, newest on top, let's make it so that we can actually edit this thing. So we want to use content editable, but we got a grave sounding warning when we used content editable. So it's a little trickier in React world. Thankfully, there is a package that makes it pretty darn easy by just giving us a new component. It is called React-Content Editable. Here it is on GitHub. React Content Editable. A React component for a div with editable contents. And it gives us an example with some old school React.create class syntax that we don't use anymore. But we can still get the idea. It's a content editable component. Let's install this thing. So to install it, if you do not have Yarn, first consider installing it tonight. If you look at the notes for yesterday, we did add details about Yarn at the bottom. Install it in your spare time because it really is a lot faster and it does some nice things. If you have Yarn, just say yarn add React-content editable. If you do not, it would be npm install -- save React content editable. Why is it making this impossible to grab? Oh, this is somehow, I don't know. All right, npm install -- save React content editable or yarn add React content editable. What that does is add it to our package.json, and it goes ahead and installs it. So now we need to use it. And we're going to use it inside thing, right? Thing is where we want to type thing.js. And it's this rascal. So we're going to have to import this because it's in an npm package, right? So I'm going to do this above my CSS import. I like to put all of the imports that we didn't write, that come from third parties at the top. And I like to usually put a blank line between them and the ones that are actually internal to our project. So import am I not on the right commit over here? Oh yeah. Import, I think it's just called content editable, from React-content editable. There's no path to it because it's an npm package. It's going to get it out of node modules. Content editable is the name of the component. And we're actually going to replace this div with this new component. I'll put them side by side for now until we're done. Capital C, content editable. And it needs some props, or it doesn't know what to do. Looking at the documentation, it looks like we set the initial value with this HTML prop. So what's that going to be? What do we want the content of this thing to be when the page loads? What was the content of this div that we're replacing? Yeah. Thing.name indeed. All right. Looks like we could put disabled true or false. If we leave it out, it's true. And then we could use onChange and give it a function that'll happen that'll run anytime that this thing changes. For right now, let's see if this gets us something. Let's get rid of our div now. We should probably put that class of name on there because I think we were relying on it for CSS. So I'm going to put that back. Class name equals name. And let's have a look. Failed to compile. Cannot resolve React contentable. No, I suppose not. Content editable, on the other hand, is just fine. Try clicking in one of these, and they're back to being editable. And look at the console. There are no grave warnings. Cool. Now, nothing actually happens when we change it. Let's try changing it. Bread. Look at React, look at app, look at state. Whichever one, I think that's thing 2. It still just says bread. There's no bang bang there. So we need an on-change event handler, right? So on change, we want to change the name of one of the things in things. And things lives on app, really, in state, right? So we know ultimately we're going to have to call something from there. To make a change to that, we're going to have to pass down another function as a prop. Let's see. We could do this one of a few ways. Let's call it save thing. And I'm going to make it actually receive a thing as an argument. We could make this the actual event handler, but I'd rather handle the event inside our component, our other component, and then call this just to persist the state. Because it just feels like handling the actual event is probably really the responsibility of the thing component. But save thing is going to update state. So since we've passed in a thing, it's going to be very similar to add thing, but we don't need this part, right? Because we already have the thing being passed in. We do need to get a copy of the things as they are. And then we'll need to set the value at the key that is the ID. Now, there'll already be something there, right? Because this is an existing one. And we'll just replace it with our new thing, our updated thing. And then we will once again just set state, specifically set the things in state equal to this object here. So ThingList is going to need to know about this new function. So we can pass in another prop. I'm going to start indenting this so that it's a little easier to fit on the screen. So we need a prop called save thing. It's going to be this dot save thing. Okay. So inside ThingList, it's actually thing itself, not ThingList, that needs this, right? So I could add yet another prop to this. What if I just take all the props that ThingList received and pass them down? Let's use a little trick to do that. Since props is an object, I can just destructure that object here, or rather use the spread operator, or maybe it's the rest operator in this context. Just like that. So that's the equivalent of writing, whatever prop, save thing equals props dot save thing, but it's going to do it for every single property of props. So now they're all just going to get passed down to thing. It's going to save us a little typing because this may not be the last thing we have to do like this. So now all the props that ThingList has should also be available on thing. Let's confirm that. Let's look inside thing. Here's thing. Let's look at its props. Aha, it has save thing now. Cool. Look at that. It also has thing. Huh. We don't have to explicitly pass in props.things square bracket thing ID. Because that specific thing. Really? Oh no, what? Oh no, that's because it's being passed in. I'm sorry. ThingList doesn't have that. ThingList has all the things. Right. So it has its own props too. So we're passing all the props that ThingList has, save thing and things, down to the thing component. Save thing and things. And then thing we're passing in explicitly. Now you notice that key isn't there despite the fact that we set a key prop. That is only used internally in React. That is so it knows how to keep track of each instance of this component and uniquely identify it. It's not actually available to us. If we needed to get to that ID another way, we would have to add another prop and call it something else. So once again, this line is a tad long, so I'm going to break it up. Oops. Okay, so now we're passing save thing down to thing. Now it needs to call it. So we need an on change here, we said. On change equals some function. Let's call it update name. So I'm once again just going to create a local function inside my function called update name. And that's going to be my event handler, right? So what I want to do is build a new thing, or not build a new thing, just take the thing I have, change the name, and then pass my thing up to save thing. Now save thing is being passed in as a prop, so let's go ahead and include it up here so that we'll have it available as a local variable so that I can just say save thing like that. So update name should receive, we know it's going to be a synthetic event, not a real event because this is React and it wraps it in some other nonsense. But we know it still has a target, right? So event.currentTarget should be the thing that changed, i.e. the content editable. So we want what we typed, right? And content editable, in the real DOM, there's no dot value, right? You'd have to use text content. Well, thankfully, this content editable React component does give us a property called value, which gives what has been typed in there. So we should be able to say thing.name equals that, and then just call save thing, passing in thing. Because if you remember, save thing up here in app receives a thing as its argument. Why am I able to just call this thing? Because it's here in our argument list. It's available as a local variable. Seems reasonable. Okay. On change equals empty thing. Yeah, we need to pass in update name. Okay. Let's see what happens. Bib lettuce king. Oh, look at that. Undefined. Oh, terrible things are happening. So what does that mean? Console.log ev.currentTarget. start typing in here. Look at my console. Well, there it is. It says the value is undefined. That's kind of a bummer. Undefined. So your guess is as good as mine. Maybe we can figure this out. But for some reason on this content editable thing, and I did know this, you have to use target, not current target. Because they're slightly different things, and it's the target, not the current target, that actually has a value. But we can rely on that target being the same thing every time as far as I can tell. So that works. The target and current target are not exactly the same thing in this synthetic event. And it's the target that has the value. So knowing that we can do that, that should solve our problem. So let's say bib lettuce king of lettuces. Look at React. Check out our app state. Look at our things. Thing 1, thing 2, thing 3. This was thing 3. Bib lettuce, king of lettuces. Hey, it took our change. So again, the way that worked, we wrote something on app called save thing. Why did we do it there? Because ultimately our things live in the app component's state. State is how a component keeps track of its internal data. And we just decided early on that because really all of our components are going to need to look at the same data store, we're just going to store it at the app level. And everything else is going to have to access it through props. Because props are what we use to pass data between components. That's the purpose of props. You need to get data into a component, that's how you do it. And it basically shows up as arguments to that component. Now, state has to be updated through set state. You don't modify it directly. And needless to say, since it's internal to that component, it has to be modified within that component. So if you need an action from another component to trigger that change, then you're going to have to write a method that you can call from that other component. And the only way to pass anything from one component to another is through props. So we write this method that does the update, and then we pass that as a prop to another component. So we pass it all the way down to thing, and then thing has access to this method that we defined at the app level. It's passed in as an argument, effectively. So then we can handle the event locally inside this component, and then call that method, which happens to really live way up here, where it can update the state of the app component appropriately. Questions about that? There'll be more examples, but is that similar to how you guys did it if you did it? Who did it? Again. Is that kind of like what you did? Mohawk? Okay, you didn't do it in place. Right. We do want to be able to edit existing ones, so it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. You add a totally blank one to the list, and then you edit it. Akash, did you do more or less?
I added a text area.
Perfectly legitimate and what I really expected. Nothing wrong with that.